Hi guys, I'm Jordan Cutler, and this is Glitch in the Riff. On the very first episode tonight, we featured Tanya Goncalves from Mississauga, Ontario. She is both an artist and a researcher who focuses on the relationship between audio programming, live coding, and electroacoustic composition. Tanya has studied at McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario for her undergrad in Communication Studies and Multimedia. Currently, Tanya is in her master's program at McMaster University for Communication and New Media. Tanya has been a part of the university's cybernetic orchestra, as well as working for the Hamilton Arts Council. Now, without further ado, let's go to Tanya. Hey Tanya, thanks for joining us tonight.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so how are you doing?
Good. Fairly busy.
Yeah?
Currently in a master's program.
Oh, that's fun. That's always fun.
Yeah, it's been exciting. It's been a new turn of events. It's been good.
That's always good.
Yeah.
So, again, thank you for showing up. So let's get started with this.
Okay.
So the first question I had for our viewers tonight is, being involved in more live and programmed coding compositions, what inspired you in using programming as a way of music composition?
Okay. So I was never classically trained. I was never a classically trained musician. When I was younger, I took a few lessons in piano and then dabbled in guitar as a teenager. And I was exposed to programming and, the field of live coding and musical composition in that sense through a professor of mine at my university. And it was through him kind of pitching this laptop orchestra called the Cybernetic Orchestra. And, seeing this like idea of coding music and making music through computer code really fascinated me and got me very interested. So this laptop orchestra kind of sparked and spiraled all my other interests in, musical composition and live coding and performance. So it really started there with a laptop orchestra.
Nice. So, how long have you been a part of the laptop orchestra, and what do you find like the most fun out of the experience? And can you talk about it a little bit more in detail?
Sure. So I've been with the Cybernetic Orchestra for close to 5 years now. So when I joined them, I was in my first year of my undergraduate. And now I'm in, a master's program 4 years later. So I've been with them
Mhm.
for a while. One of the things that was really challenging for me in joining them in those like preliminary weeks was having no programming experience and also having no musical composition experience. So going into this orchestra without those two things was a bit of a challenge, but at the same time, it's also, sparked so much interest that I wanted to overcome those challenges. And overcoming those challenges eventually grew to be a love of mine. And, I loved making music in that way. One of the funnest things I think we've done as a group, besides performing several different pieces, is we would go to one another's computers and change lines of code and perform in that way by making small musical gestures and small changes. That's always been a lot of fun at performances. People are very taken with that kind of thing, and we enjoy doing that kind of thing too. So it's probably the most fun thing we do.
That's really cool. Like I know some of your work personally because we both met at Ties during the conference and that. So when you started doing coding in that for like musical coding, I was sort of thrown off because all I've done is like orchestrated composition in that.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, you created a program called Hive. So can you explain your program to the audience for us?
Sure. So Hive is a live coding language. It's built over a bigger language called SuperCollider, which is an open source live coding language. And it's an object-oriented programming language as well. So when I joined the Cybernetic Orchestra, there was a year where we had been working very heavily with SuperCollider. And it took me a long time to pick up on the syntax of the language and to learn the different types in the language. And one thing I kind of remember asking is, well, why is there not an easier way to kind of play and learn super collider code rather than, having to start completely from scratch. So my whole goal with building Hive was to build this really simple language for beginning users to kind of get into live coding and get interested in making music in that way, not be so intimidated by hard syntax and hard code. So I hid away, what was hard and difficult and gave them something that was simplified. And if they were curious enough, they could go and see, what was behind those simple lines of codes. I restricted them to working with 4 instruments and very limited, you know, different variances and uses. So they were limited to a few things to play around with to help them learn and get started.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's really cool. What would you say some of the unique differences between your program is? So yeah, what makes your program unique compared to other people's programs?
So there's a lot of other programs out there that are, built to make coding syntax simpler for people and to hide away the difficult stuff. Hive is just like a kind of a little nook on like super collider syntax. I guess what makes it kind of unique is the fact that it really restricts people in what they can do, and that might actually be a good thing. So people are limited to working with, 4 different instruments. It gets them kind of comfortable with writing functions and doing method calls. I've taken away in the design other elements of working with code and just concentrated just on writing functions and method calls so that things were simple and clean and easy for people to learn. So I think that's what's probably the most unique about it. It's fun to make music with, and you can definitely live code with it for sure. So yeah.
That's nice. So after you presented your work in that and published it and all that, so far, how has Hive affected? So what's happened after you published it?
So I published it, and it was a lot of fun, making that whole project and doing all the research that I did, and it formed a lot of other projects that I finished and completed and I'm working on now. So what I found kind of interesting was that people contacted me to use Hive not only for their own personal use, but in their classrooms. So there's several people who contact me that want to use it for their college classes or to teach during workshops and stuff like that, which I totally encourage because it's an open source language. It's meant to be shared with other people. So that's been really cool. The project kind of helped inform another project that I did as part of an undergraduate thesis, which is almost like a bit of a continuation to Hive. And I made this new language over the web audio API called WASP. And the whole purpose behind that language was, again, to restrict people and to teach them about live coding, but to make it more accessible, because instead of being, locked in with a piece of software like Super Collider, we now have something that's open and available on the web for anyone to use.
So, wow, that's great. I'm glad to hear.
Yeah, thank you.
It's always nice when you're a programmer that starts spreading out and people really want to use it.
Yeah, I hope people use it.
Well, I'm planning on using it in that because I actually downloaded it, so I'm going to be using it as sort of like the intro theme thing. So I'm going to use people's different programs, sort of and compose my own intro in that. So you'll get credits.
Oh, cool. Okay, that sounds awesome.
Yeah. So with going more into the theory side, because you studied at McMaster University in communication studies and multimedia. So I wanted to know why you decided to go with Thomas Green's cognitive dimensions as a theory for Hive.
So Thomas Green covered a lot of different dimensions that were in regards to programming languages. And his kind of, the way he spoke about these different dimensions and the vocabulary he used was like a way to get me started on how to think about designing a new syntax. So he talks about these things of error proneness, how hard is it for a user to run into an error and things like that. So his terminology and the things he discussed in his book, although it didn't relate directly at all to audio programming languages in particular, kind of gave me this vocabulary to say, okay, well, he discusses these different issues that could be a good thing or a bad thing. How can I kind of use this terminology to design something to maybe be better at one thing, or maybe not necessarily better in the other? So I used his terminology as kind of like a guideline to design a syntax.
That's interesting. Yeah, because when I was reading it, I was sort of looking into the background of who Thomas Green was, both as a musician and as a theorist as well, who studies theory at the university here. So
Yeah.
I found that really interesting, the combination of the two. So with that in mind, so another piece of yours, correct me if I'm saying it wrong, fractals.
Yeah, that's correct.
You performed at Imaginary Landscape Festival. So you used 3 different programs. You used Super Collider, you used Max MSP, and you used Chuck.
Yeah.
So first I want you sort of to describe each of the programs and what
Sure.
they do. But can you explain as well why you used 3 programs for a composition instead of 1?
Sure. Okay, so Super Collider and Chuck and Max MSP as well, are live coding musical languages that you could use to make music in live code. Max MSP is kind of visually tailored language. It uses kind of these objects to design and compose and make sounds and do all kinds of cool, unique things. You can add effects to audio wave files. I'll get into that because that's what I used it for. And then, of course, there's Super Collider, which is, an object-oriented language that people use for, producing music and live coding and building stuff. And then there's Chuck, which is also another text-based live coding language that's kind of an older language as well. It's newer than Super Collider, though, I should mention that. And I worked with Chuck for a couple years when I joined the Cybernetic Orchestra, so I was familiar with it and comfortable with building instruments and things with it. So when I wanted to start this this composition, I wanted to make something different that people hadn't heard before. And I was so inspired by electric acoustic music and specifically like acousmatic compositions. I wanted to kind of take that tradition and spin it on its head and use live coded music, and then kind of add effects to that music, whether it be reverberation, granular synthesis, distortions, and completely change how the source sounds, like where the source sounds essentially came from. So when I started with it, I was live coding music using Super Collider and Chuck. I wanted to use 2 different languages because I kind of wanted to get a variation of different sounds, because sounds are going to be built differently on both languages. And I recorded it using traditional recording methods. I had like a Zoom mic. I was in a studio with like, I believe 8 speakers around me, stood in the center of the room as I was live coding and recorded it that way, which a lot of people thought was crazy. They're like, why would you do that? Like, you could have just recorded it digitally rather than hold a recorder in the middle of a room. And I was like, well, that's not the point. Like, I was inspired by this like old, this old kind of method of acousmatic composition, and I wanted to reflect that, and I wanted to do it that way. So I got all these recordings of these, these live coded sounds that I really liked, and then I took those wave files and I created different patches on Max MSP to kind of distort and change them. So, I added a lot of like granular synthesis and reverberation patches, changed it, re-recorded everything, and then finally did like a final mix down on Reaper, which I did all my mixing for. I got a singer to come in and do vocals as well, recorded her, mixed that all up and messed it up on Max MSP, did all kinds of things to it, and then put everything into Reaper, and I did like a final mix down after like 30 different ones that I went through, and then finally like I got the finished one. So I was just interested in kind of playing around with different languages and seeing what I could bring into it. Yeah.
Wow, that's really amazing. Yeah, because I was sort of wondering like how you used 3 programs for one composition instead of one. I was like, that's really odd. because when I saw you with the Cybernetic Orchestra, you guys did when you guys were playing in London, you did two programmings. You did Super Collider, was it?
Yeah, it was Super Collider and Tidal.
In Tidal, right?
Yeah.
So I found that interesting, using two different programs to make one music composition.
Yeah.
So sending code from one to the other and vice versa.
Yeah. So maybe
was,
maybe the orchestra kind of had that influence with me, right? This idea of using more than one language and experimenting, and that probably also had like this impact on me wanting to play with more than one thing. So,
right.
You know.
That could be it.
Yeah.
So so my next question would be another piece of yours. So with not doing only programming composition, you also did digital art process, a process as well, through your piece called nonparial. Is it called? Sorry.
Nonparial, yeah.
Nonparial. So which means not match or equal when looking up the term for it.
Yeah.
So so why did you get started in doing digital art, and what is the significance behind why you decided to name the piece
You got it, nonparial.
Nonparial.
So I had a huge influence from colleagues of mine when I was studying my undergraduate and I was in my first and second year of university. So the Cybernetic Orchestra had a huge influence. I met a lot of my colleagues there, and a lot of them were much older and more mature than I was. You know, they were doing master's degrees, they were already out of university and were very, very active in the art world here in Hamilton. And I got to see the kind of art they were making really young. Like I was maybe like 18, 19 when I got to go out and see these kinds of things, and I was really influenced by the stuff they did and really inspired by the stuff they did. So I wanted to, I wanted to also experiment with different art practices, not just live coding, but creating generative art, creating visual programs and stuff like that. So I got into that really quickly, and what I found was I liked using generative art that kind of interacted with my live coded audio or even my audio compositions, because I found that it just added like another element to kind of extend the work to another level. So I got really into creating, these different kinds of generative art pieces that I would then project onto a screen or onto a surface of some kind if I was performing, or if it was an installation with an audio piece, a soundscape that I had, then, I would build something around my audio that would interact with it. So I was inspired partly by the people I was around and the stuff that I saw in Hamilton during art crawl, but I was also like inspired to extend, just the audio to be something more, to have visuals with it, to have something kind of take it up to the next level. Yeah, so this idea of nonparial, I made this piece when I was in, I believe, the second or third year of my undergraduate, so 2 or 3 years ago. I was really inspired by like minimalist kind of music and art at that time. And in particular, I kind of wanted to create something that, sort of reflect the ideals of that time and that kind of art practice. So nonparial is not just a visual piece. It generates with this, this composition that I coded, and it was like very, very like minimal lines of audio code. Like it was maybe 1 or 2 lines that I then like layered over one another to sound more complex than they actually were. And same thing with this, this art piece that kind of like generated was, very tiny dots that would like layer over one another to become something, kind of complex. So yeah. Nonparial, yeah. It's just a cool name, I guess, that I liked.
Yeah, because like knowing you as well, when I was reading what you've done, like doing visuals on that, I was like, I never knew you did that. And I was like, that'd be interesting to talk about and see where it went from there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was really cool, because I believe as well, adding like visuals in that, if you can, to your art. So it's more the aesthetic and pleasing side of it when it comes to art, because some people, you get to listen to it, but some people want something to see at the same time. So that was really cool to think about when you were mentioning about why you created this piece as well,
Yeah.
and especially being influenced at a very young age with being in that scene as well. Because like for me, I didn't start till oof, 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, getting involved more into this experimental avant-garde kind of scene of music and art and all of that. So it's been an interesting ride.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so any current projects at all that you're working on that you'd like to tell us?
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier on, I'm starting a master's right now. I just started in September, so I've been in for 2 months now. Part of my master's is to create, this major research project, and I'm, planning to do like a media piece, an artwork, an art piece. So, um, I've been doing a lot of different kinds of things in terms of making, languages accessible to people and live coding and music accessible to people. So, um, I wanted to continue that in a different way. So I've been interested really in audience participation more and more now, especially in terms of my live coding performances. One thing that I've been interested in is getting audience members more involved, but also looking at different ways to kind of, spatialize and diffuse sound at the same time. So, what I've been thinking about in terms of my research project, which is like in the beginning phases right now, like no prototype has been made yet, as of yet, is to use mobile phones as not only as a method for sound diffusion, but also as a way to get audiences to participate in my live coding performance. So essentially, these mobile phones and these tablets would be my method to have sound project out into the room, but also give audience members a chance to interact with my performance. So I would act as this central, controller who would essentially be, I don't know, on a tablet or on a laptop, controlling how this sound would be diffused across the mobile phones in the room. So I've been thinking about that a lot, and it's probably the direction I'm going to go in with this project.
So with that idea, I really like it actually. And so would you be doing a lot of so would you be creating an app that people can download so that way they get like a certain frequency, they get a certain note or that?
Well, I was thinking about that way, but the thing is, like, in terms of getting people to download an app, especially for performance, if you're like at a big conference, that might be a bit of a pain to tell people, oh, by the way, you need to download this application. People might not necessarily want to do that. So I was thinking to make things a little easier was to send people to a website link and make the entire thing over the Web Audio API. That would, eliminate the whole problem of downloading an app, and it would be much easier to send people to this link on a page. You know, they could direct their phones there, and I could start composing and doing stuff right away once people are, onto that website.
Yeah.
That's
really cool. Yeah, I can't wait to maybe be one of the audience members who gets the pleasure in performing that.
Hopefully. Well, I'm hoping to send it to NIME for the upcoming year, so
Oh yeah,
we'll see.
I still gotta finish mine for NIME as well. So
Yeah, we're
hey, maybe
both
we'll go
on.
together.
Yeah, seriously, Australia.
I know, right? I've never been, so
Well, neither have I.
Hey, sweet. So
There we
both
go.
an adventure. So with as well. So being a female composer and programmer as well, have you noticed any like struggles within your work, your audience, and like academia when it comes to it? Because you don't hear too many female programmers out there doing a lot of what you do.
Yeah. So I feel that like in the field, that I'm in, like female presence is lacking. For sure it is. And a researcher whose work really inspired me and kind of, you know, pushed me not to be discouraged by that was research by Jane Margolis, who talks about the lack of minorities who get involved in computer science and programming and why women don't necessarily, pursue computing, and even if they do, why they tend to leave. And there's a lot of different factors as to why these things happen: societal reasons, personal reasons, historical reasons. There's a bunch of different things. Um, are there struggles? Sure, yeah. There's, um, I do find though that especially with the non community in general, that people are very accepting of women and are very encouraging, in fact,
Yeah.
and are very much like, we need more women in this field. I just think it's a matter of of education and accessibility. People don't necessarily know that this kind of field exists or is out there. And I'm a TA now, and I'm teaching a lot of young women who are in my design and code class, and I show them what I do and I tell them about what I do, and a lot of them are very interested, and are very good programmers and are a lot younger than I am. And some of them are even on par with me. And I'm like, that culture of women not being involved in computers and code is starting to change now. And I'm seeing it change in front of me. And I'm an example of this, I don't,
Yeah.
like a lot of people that I met are just like, wow, like you're a female live coder. Like there's so few of you. There's so few live coders in general, but there's more and more women getting involved in this field. And we're seeing it change. So,
So
yeah.
you're thinking like maybe starting something with only the like you said, with being a GA at your university, you have a lot of female composers out there now. So have you thought of maybe starting something with like just a group of female composers and doing like something like that?
No, never actually. I never really thought of that, but that'd be a really cool thing to do. One thing I have gotten actively involved in is, well, I help run this club at my university, and it's a gaming club. It really, I guess, has nothing to do with musical composition, but it's a video game club, and they have the same issue of women not getting involved in this field of video games and video game design and programming. And um, a lot of things that we've done are doing talks and educational talks on women in coding and women in programming. And that's something I've been actively involved in and trying to get more women involved. I would actually love to do some kind of composition with female live coders. And I have spoken to quite a few. There's not many of us, but
But
you
there's
know.
like a good enough
Oh
to
yeah.
start something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The problem is people are busy doing like PhDs and postdocs and stuff like that. So dedicating the time to like make an album or something.
Like you could probably like go promote it at different universities, at different universities, or even like at high school and that, because like that's sort of where their interest starts peaking.
Yeah.
And maybe do some like I'm just saying, maybe do something along those lines of interacting with the high school students, so that way they see that there's something to offer, like at McMaster, because right now I don't know too many programs that offer what you guys do, as in
Yeah.
like multimedia communications and all that. Because like at my university we do like we have the music department, and we have like classes in that, like classes where we sort of do a lot of experimental stuff. But in our communication department we talk about like the theories and the understanding, but we don't have what you guys have, is sort of that mix in between of the multimedia art form there, which
Yeah.
I sort of regret not applying to McMaster for a little bit.
Yeah. It's a program that not many people are too aware of unless they go looking for it. Like I found it by fluke when I was in high school, when I was looking for, I wanted to do media, like I want to do hands-on art making stuff, but I also wanted to do theory as well. So
Mm-hmm.
I saw that they allowed you to combine programs if you wanted to. So I did communications and multimedia.
Right.
But it's a program that's not as well known because it's so small. The multimedia program takes 50 students every year. It's competitive. And then the communication studies program, I think, takes around 200. So small programs, but they're there and they exist. And I think people are starting to, get to know the program better because of the faculty and who we have here. So,
Yeah.
seeing more and
So
more
like,
applicants. So,
oh, you know what? That's always good.
yeah.
Especially with the promotion of that from I'm guessing like the cybernetic orchestra would really help with that, like pushing that program in that, because are a lot of people from the cybernetic orchestra in the same program that you were in?
There's a good percentage of people who do come from the multimedia program and communications background, but some people come from completely different backgrounds. We've got people from engineering, people from sciences, people from arts and sciences, people, it's just generally people who have an interest in music making and programming, who are like kind of interested, come in. They don't necessarily have to be from that program. We do promote it a lot within the program, people who are interested, but yeah, we've had people from like all kinds of backgrounds, so that
So
doesn't
it's sort of
even,
like, yeah, so it's sort of like the fun mix of like putting everyone together and just enjoying
shaking
music,
it up.
yeah, shake it up a little bit.
Yeah. So we've had people from a lot of different backgrounds,
That's cool.
which is good. It brings like different perspectives. We've had people who come from like very, very like, well-trained music backgrounds who bring in this whole different mentality to like the orchestra. We've had people like that who, are just like, oh, like, why don't we do this kind of chord progression and do like these chords? And I'm sitting there just like, what do you mean? Like, I don't understand, right? Because I don't have that background. And I'll be like, and like we'd help each other out. I'd be like, well, you can make this instrument and synthesize it in this way, and then you can play like an array of notes. And all of a sudden we were speaking like the same language, and like we understood what we were saying to each other. So it's been really fun. Like,
Yeah, I think that would be an interesting paper to talk about the like the combination of both, like music, the multimedia, and even like how all the different departments at your university sort of get together and sort of just like collide into this one entity of creating this like orchestra. I think that would be an interesting paper to sort of talk about how that works. And
you'd have to like pitch that to my professor.
hey, you can take the idea if you want.
It'd be a good idea.
Yeah.
You should have him on one of your talks.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I know David a little bit, so I think it would be good.
There you go.
Yeah. So last question for the interview tonight, and thank you again for showing up.
No problem.
Talk to you about this, because not too many people are interested in this sort of art side, right? Because it's always like either what's the top 40 or classical music, but it's sort of the center point of our existence, right?
Yeah.
And how this actually ties up to the main question: why do you see the new wave of electronic composition writing to be important in this generation?
Well, it's because technology is constantly changing around us. So electronic music writing, electronic composition, the kinds of things that you and I do are growing in popularity and just kind of finding their ways into different parts of culture if you look around us. So it's important because essentially, I don't like saying this, but if you want to like keep up with how technology is changing, you need to kind of learn about these different things. There's nothing wrong with, the classical methods of writing composition and stuff like that. It's just times are starting to change. People are using their computers, people are using electronics to make music and write music. And it's important to realize that and to realize that things are changing in the way musical composition is being made, So, yeah. But I don't like to say that people are going to become obsolete if they don't do things a certain way. It's just, people need to realize that the world is changing so quickly and technology is becoming more and more accessible to people. So, the way we're going to make music is going to be different 20 years from now than how we're doing it right now. Like the technology we're using, like these wonderful Bose headphones, are going to be obsolete very, very soon. I guarantee it.
Yeah. Product placement right here.
Yeah. Like this idea of live coding, like we don't even know what's going to happen to live coding. Like it could, it's probably going to become, maybe a casual thing, a thing that everyone's going to end up doing just and on an everyday basis. Like who knows? Like we don't know what's going to happen fully, but we know that technology is moving quickly, and the way people are writing music is completely changed. Like if we think about, if we go back to like the 1970s and we look at how LPs were made and all of a sudden, just in a very short period of time, people started getting interested in synthesized sounds and synthesized music and working with electronic synths and doing digital reproduction and doing tapes and cassettes and stuff. So things are just like constantly moving like very, very quickly. What was once, God knows, like a $15,000 program to do audio editing is now free and open source and online for people to use. I was reading an article about this with Sony. Like, Sony used to have these super expensive professional studio audio editing programs that now are like peanuts. Like, you can buy for like $20 or less. Or, I use free ones that do just as good of a job. So stuff is always changing.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. And we never know what's going to happen in the next 10 years, 20 years with technology, and how people plan on using that technology in the arts field. So I'm personally excited to see what happens then. So, hopefully, like, when I actually have free time, I'll start coding that. But, hopefully everyone will get into that. Oh yeah, I'll have to keep up in that, because I sort of know, like, like a good amount of Max MSP and all that and how to use it. So that's sort of where I go, because I use Ableton, right?
Yeah.
So
see, I've never used Ableton, which is funny. You'd think I'd use Ableton. I never have, ever. I'm confessing on this chat right now. I am a composer, and I've never used Ableton once. Not once. That just goes to show that, like, I don't even have to use Ableton, because there's so many other options out there.
Yeah, just code.
Exactly.
Code your music.
Just code your music. I need to get that on a t-shirt. Oh my god, that's actually brilliant. I need to write it down. Just code your music.
Code your music on a t-shirt.
It's gonna be a t-shirt design, you'll see.
You know how, like, people start like wearing the whole, like, eat, sleep, code, repeat?
Yeah.
It's like something like that. You should do, like, something like that sort of on the back. That's pretty much your lifestyle.
Pretty much. Pretty much.
Hey, if you get that on a t-shirt, I'm still getting one.
Yeah, I know. I'll send you one for Christmas to Windsor. Or to Hamilton, actually. If you come back home, then
yeah, it's a Hamilton. I'll be home by then.
Okay.
Well, that's the end of the podcast. I'd like to thank you again for coming on to Glitch in the Riff.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. If you like what you heard, please click on the link below. Next week, we feature James O'Callahan in talking about his many different compositions. Thanks for tuning in at Glitch in the Riff.